Welcome to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. What is your relationship with money? Do you have one? Do you have respect for money, or do you crave and need it because it'll solve all your problems and bring you happiness? I just finished reading Messages from Money, and it's just that. Money is actually speaking to you from its perspective. And let me tell you, I learned a lot. Ellen Rogin is a New York Times bestselling author, an abundance activist, and author of Messages from Money: How to Stress Less, Prosper More, and Reshape Your Relationship with Money. And that is today's focus. Ellen, welcome to Empowered. Thank you for being here today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here with you, Elizabeth. Thank you.
I am too. So let's begin. Why do you think money is such a complicated issue for most of us?
Money flows through pretty much every single part of our lives. It impacts our relationships, it impacts our work, how much we're paid, can impact our health depending on our stress. And we've also been brought up with a lot of different messages, and it hasn't always been clear or easy for most people.
So, in your latest book, Messages from Money, you talk about the connection between our beliefs surrounding money and basically the reality of it. So, what inspired you to write it?
For about 28 years, I was a traditional financial advisor. And what I saw over and over with my clients is that some of them could have great wealth and feel like they didn't have enough. Other people were really had a lot of gratitude and more contentment in their life. And some of the people that I met with had more modest means, and their quantity of money typically didn't have much to do with their contentment level. And I became a student of our beliefs about money very early in my career because it was fascinating to me how people are with money and how it impacts their decision making.
So, you mentioned that most people talk about financial wellness starting, with financial literacy, which, I'm a huge advocate of. Also creating an emergency reserve and getting out of debt. And we're both passionate about that. Now, we talk about these things with clients and friends and people who join us when we're speaking. But you state you can understand financial terms, be a disciplined saver and a savvy investor, and you can still be dysfunctional when it comes to money. So please explain that.
I imagine that everyone can think of someone they know that maybe has a lot of financial security and still stresses about it. They're afraid it's going to leave them. Perhaps they're really self-impoverishing themselves. If anyone has parents or grandparents that grew up during the Depression, that might be an easy example of that because they're so worried it could disappear again. And yes, of course, understanding financial terms and being a great saver and getting rid of consumer debt is incredibly important. But if there's not contentment and solid beliefs around money, it doesn't mean that it's going to work well in your life.
You know what I found by interviewing a lot of women who are self made? They are basically the ones that are afraid of losing. They're afraid
Mm.
that they're not going to have enough when they retire. But I find that most of the women who are successful are have written books, or it doesn't matter what their success is. They are always the ones that have that fear of losing it all.
Yeah, I think there's this fundamental need or want that most people, many people have of just wanting to know they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And as a financial advisor, I knew it was more than me running projections for people to have them have that confidence. Sometimes it was really looking at their belief system with them or constantly reminding them about that because they were just terrified it could all go away for them.
So when we come back, we're going to talk about scarcity and abundance thinking when it comes to money, because it goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. And I want you to really delve into it and explain to us exactly what it is and basically why it matters. So please do not go away. We'll be right back with more of Ellen Rogin. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's focus is how to reshape our relationship with money. Ellen, before we went to break, I was talking about, the way that we think. You have an easy way for people to think about scarcity and abundance. Could you share that with us as to why it really matters?
I'd love to do that. And it might be helpful for me to just give some definitions of scarcity and abundance. So, scarcity thinking tends to be fear based, worrying a lot, aggressive competition. For me to win, you have to lose. There's only so much to go around. Can also show up in judgment, judging other people how they are with money, or being envious, like, oh, I wish that were me, that happened to. And abundance thinking is optimistic and collaborative, and there's more than enough to go around, and generosity lives in abundance thinking. And one of the ways that I find it really helpful to think about these is going with the current or against the current. My husband, Stephen, did an Ironman competition about 4 years ago, and he did really, really well in the swim. And part of the reason he did well in the swim is that it was in the Ohio River and he was swimming with the current. So I like to think of abundance thinking is going with the current. Everything's just easier. Scarcity thinking is swimming against the current. Now, I often ask audiences, do you think someone can have a lot of money and be a scarcity thinker? I'm like, like we can all think of people that are like that. And I say, like, what? Yes. And it sucks. Like, why would you want to do that? You could also have more joy and contentment being an abundance thinker. And we all can flow into scarcity, sometimes going against the current. We see something on the news or something happens, you lose a job or something scary happens. But noticing that and doing things to move you back into abundance thinking helps calm our nervous system down, and it does make things easier.
Who doesn't want to have an easier life and make things easier? I want to talk about the money MO chart and how it can give readers perspective, well, readers of the book perspective and viewers on their relationship with money.
Yeah, I came up with this chart, your money MO, your modus operandi, when I was doing a program for couples. And I realized that we think about a chart with the top part attention and the bottom part avoidance, and then on the left side judgment and the right side appreciation. So if you're high on attention and high on judgment, that would be where control lives. We can think of people that like pay so much attention to their money and they're judging how other people do things. They tend to be a little bit controlling. Judgment and avoidance, this is where blame lives. This is where you're blaming the economy, the government, the interest rate, everything else, but taking personal responsibility for your finances. The lower right-hand quadrant is high in appreciation and low and high on avoidance. This is where passivity comes. And this might be somebody who just turns all the responsibility of their money over to somebody else, an advisor, a partner, a parent. And then attention and appreciation is where prosperity lives. Now, especially when you think about other people in your life, if you are someone who's really high in control, and you're married to somebody or you're in a relationship with somebody who's low on avoidance or high on avoidance and appreciative, they might like not have good communication with you. You could be also really high on prosperity, but if you're not helping the other people in your life take some responsibility for themselves, then you're not really helping them, right? This is parents that someone just told me a story about 80-year-old parent who's finally turning control over to his 40 and 50-year-old daughters to handle money. Like,
Wow.
you know, like
Yeah.
you're not really helping anybody by waiting to do that.
No, you aren't helping anyone at all. That's bizarre to me, but let's move on. I want to talk about, we've got 30 seconds before we go to commercial break. So um, I think what I'll do is when we come back, we will talk more about some of the reasons why most common people feel money anxiety. And basically, we can talk about the fact that how someone can begin to break free from their money anxiety, because whether you have money or not, people are still anxious about it. As you said earlier, you know, you can have an abundance, you can have a scarcity, but you're still going to be, you know, you're still going to feel anxious about it. So please don't go away. When we come back, more of Messages from Money. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Today's focus is how to reshape your relationship with money. So, before we went to break, I was talking about anxiety. What are some of the most common reasons people feel money anxiety?
It's often the water people swim in. It can be because they have the TV on too much. You know, financial news typically doesn't sell if they say everything's going to be okay. Like, just hang on. Things go through cycles. That's not going to sell and be engaging media. And they may have people around them that are highly anxious with money. Maybe they were brought up in a house where money was always, they were always worried about it, but it is pervasive. One study in the US found that 47% of people had enough money anxiety that it impacted their mental health. So it is a real problem to have this money anxiety. And why it's also a problem, but besides it impacts our health and it feels awful, in a book called Scarcity, the researchers found that when you are highly anxious about money, when your back is up against the wall, like sometimes really serious stuff happens. And there are things that can cause people to be really worried. Your IQ actually drops.
Wow.
So just at the time you need to be making good decisions, you're unable to. So it's crucial that we're able to have tools to help lower that nervousness.
Okay, so how can someone begin to break free from their money anxiety?
Well, as you talked about at the beginning of our conversation, of course, financial literacy is important. You know, sometimes people are worried because they don't understand. There's so many ways that we can learn more about money now. But maybe somebody knows enough and they're still nervous. It was not a traditional financial strategy, but one of my favorite ones is having a contemplative practice. I've been a regular meditator for many, many years, and I know that my meditation practice is probably the best thing I've ever done for my business and making financial decisions because it helps lower stress. And maybe you're not someone that can sit in meditation, maybe it's walking in nature. So that's one thing, is calming our nervous system down. Another thing that is counterintuitive, but it's actually generosity. When we loosen our grip on money and help other people, it makes us feel better. Not only does it help them, but there's something called subjective wealth. And Michael Norton from Harvard found that when you give money to a charity, if you were to give $500, it feels as good as getting a $10,000 raise. It's like your brain says, oh, I must be wealthy if I'm able to donate this much money. And it doesn't have to be $500, it could be 50, it could be $50,000, depending on what your situation is.
I totally agree with you and with that Harvard professor. Um, you know, when you give money to somebody who needs it, it really does make you feel so much better. But now that I found out that you are the money whisperer, like how did you realize that you had these intuitive skills, and when and how did you begin to communicate with money?
Looking back, I think I was always very intuitive with money, but I didn't realize that's what I was doing. When I would meet with clients when I was a financial planner, I would just know if they were going to be okay or not. And I would run projections because that's what I did. I'm a certified financial planner. And then I had an experience, it's about 6 or 7 years ago now. I was at a workshop and we were working just on some intuitive practicing. That wasn't the main point of the workshop. And I was paired with this guy, James. And he was to think about a money issue, turn around, and I was to deliver a message. And out of my mouth came words that were clearly not mine. I'm not going to swear in front of your viewers, but I was basically like,
Please don't.
you for thinking that you can't be spiritual and have me in your life. And he pulled out from his shirt, he said, Ellen, this is the patron saint of poverty. One of my clients gave this to me. He took it off, and then I grabbed his hand and I said, well, now I want to be with you. And when the whole thing was over, I was like, I like swearing. I don't do it at people I don't know and not in a professional setting. And I think that happened. I don't swear at people now when I do intuitive money work with them, but I think that happened. So I would wake up, and it woke James up too. He told me 3 years later that his business had skyrocketed since then. And now my process is I journal with money. So I always do this because I type my journals and I just ask money questions and I trust what comes through. And it's affirming and helpful for people. It's helpful for me. Money helped me write my book. It was my co-author.
Okay, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski. Ellen Rogin is a New York Times bestselling author, an abundance activist, and author of Messages from Money, How to Stress Less, Prosper More, and Reshape Your Relationship with Money. And that is today's focus. So, Ellen, why don't you tell our viewers about the components of the prosperity pie: aware, clear, care, and share?
These 4 areas are a great way to move from scarcity to abundance and create more of prosperity in your life. So, aware is the first part, which is being aware of what you're thinking and saying about money. What we say to ourselves has a direct impact on what shows up in our lives. If you're saying positive things, you're having positive expectations, you will see more opportunities in front of you. And that's where mindfulness and meditation comes in too, to be more aware of that. The second part is clear, being clear where you want to go and using your mind as a tool to get there. I am a huge fan of the power of visualization and imagining in your mind's eye what you want to have happen. And it's more than saying the right things and picturing it. You have to take action. And that's what care is. So we live in a material world. It's taking good care of your money. Money tells me all the time it loves it when people care for it. Doesn't want really clingy partners. It wants people that to be around people that take good care. So all the things you said, being a good saver, getting out of debt. And the last part is share. And this is when we were talking about the power of generosity. When you loosen your grip and help other people out, what goes around comes around, whether that's financial giving, which I'm a huge proponent of, but also in for anyone who's in business, to give more of what you want to get. So if you want more referrals, give more referrals, and make more introductions. And the cool thing is what goes around comes around, but not always from the place you gave it to. So if you were to help me out, you might get something back from me, but it could very quite possibly come from someone you haven't talked to in a long time, because it's giving without necessarily the expectation of something in return.
And actually, that's how I met you, because I had a previous guest on, Kim Payne, and she basically said, you need to meet my friend because she's a wealth of knowledge and I think she'd be great. And that's one of the amazing things that happens with this show. I have a guest and they always want to introduce me to their friend. And so I end up meeting their friend and then their friend. And, this wealth of knowledge is just coming out now. And it's the best way to be, being open to change, being open to everything, and giving is very important. And you and I talked about the fact that, at the end of your book, you talk about being grateful. And that's something that I do. And that really resonated with me because I look at my friends, my husband, my family, my parents, everything, my job, the show, and I am grateful every day for everything that is in my life. Um, let's talk about gratefulness. We have one more minute before we have to end. I wish we had 5 more hours, but we don't. So Let's talk about being grateful.
Great gratitude is a beautiful way to reduce your stress level as well. When we were talking about that before, grateful people live longer, they make more money, actually. And one of the things that money tells me often is like it likes some gratitude for it as well. So we can be grateful for our health and our homes. I would recommend that you add in a little bit of what you're grateful for financially. I'm grateful for I have money to put healthy food in my refrigerator. I'm grateful I have a retirement account. I'm grateful I have income coming in. And so to add that into your gratitude practice is a really great strategy.
Ellen, it was such a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much for taking the time out and explaining this to us.
What an honor to be here with you. Thank you.
Take care. Ellen's message to you is, I'm on a mission to fundamentally shift people's relationship with money. Remember, generosity precedes prosperity. In her book, Ellen talks about sharing individual gratitude. I'd like to thank you all for watching Empowered and for all of your support that you've shown me through the years. I'm Elizabeth Naumovski, and I'm here to empower you and make frugality fashionable. Thank you all for watching. See you soon. Bye for now.